So, welcome everyone to the next Catributor podcast, this time on a Sunday. And it's just the two of us, but we've plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I had some technical issues on Friday, namely that my internet was really not behaving itself. But it's all good today, so here we are. We've actually ended up with a few more things to talk about than we would have on Friday as well, so it's kind of worked out.
True. And I guess the first thing that's already in everyone's mouth is the closed test change to mechanics of detection by planes. So once again, Wargaming is testing a new concept.
Now, this is something I have talked about previously, and this is the first we've heard about it in a little while. I can't remember the last time they talked about doing this kind of thing, but they have acknowledged, at least since earlier this year, the need to do something about the current state of spotting with planes.
Yeah, but the thing is always that Wargaming said, like, yeah, we acknowledge that this is a problem, but there just isn't a solution. They pretend that they put the best scientists in years of research into finding a solution, and there just isn't any. When they already tested the minimap spotting only, and then they claim this isn't work because it's too complicated for people, which is a lie, because that's already in the game as Cyclones. So they claimed that something that's already in the game, they can't put in it. And now they've made the system more complicated, and I think this is the solution, because they it's mind-boggling.
Submarines, it's worth pointing out that submarine hydro works by minimap spotting as well. You put out the hydro pulses and it updates the minimap in those intervals. So, yeah. Basically, they want to move away from the current model where fighters or attack squads instantly spot a ship, surface ship, for everybody else. And what they're talking about is a new concept whereby, I'll read it out. Any enemies detected by planes will be displayed for the whole team on the mini-map. However, only allies who are within a certain radius of the squadron that is detecting the enemy ship will see the actual model of the ship, so long as it does not become detected by the allied ships themselves. So, essentially, we're going to end up with another new stat, which is, the radio range of planes, which will then therefore inform allies within a certain radius, or be able to, spot within the certain radius that those ships are there. And everyone will be able to see it on the minimap, but only those ships will be able to actually see the model of the ship. They're also talking about adding a new consumable for testing a reconnaissance aircraft designed for spotting the enemy so that allies can fire. It'll be deployed the same way fighters are, but instead of attacking enemy planes, it'll just allow nearby allies to see enemy ships. So they're acknowledging also that people an awful lot of the time use their fighters just for spotting instead. So I don't know, what do we think about that? I mean, they're definitely acknowledging the issue, but I don't know if it's quite the solution I would have gone for.
I mean, the problem is
it's still lighting up, like it's all of the nearby ships who are the main threat. Like if you're a destroyer anyway and you get lit up by aircraft, this changes nothing. It's all the nearby ships that are most likely to be able to shoot at you that still get to see you directly. Not like there's any kind of delay involved or anything. So I'm honestly not sure what this solves.
I mean, the biggest question is what's the radius, right? Because that's
changes
radius changes
everything. I haven't
everything.
talked about that. If it's going to be like super short range, I mean, it stops long range incoming fire, but that's the fire you're most likely to be able to dodge anyway.
I mean, the thing that I see is, right, what happens sometimes in a cruiser. Let's say you're in a squishy cruiser in Des Moines, a Minotaur or something like that. And early game, you want to position, like at Des Moines, you want to go to that island. You get spotted briefly by planes, and a battleship 23 kilometers one-shots you while you're completely angled with overmatch. And while this doesn't happen all the time, it's such an annoyance if you get spotted while deploying early on, just by planes, that you can't do anything about it. And if you're in a squishy cruiser, your only hope is to dodge the incoming sheriffs because you can't angle against them. And that's one thing where it would help.
Yeah, it would. For cruisers, it would definitely help. Like, I feel like it's not really helping destroyers that much, but I suppose for cruisers, yes, that certainly would be a great aid, especially in the earlier parts of the game when you're trying to get into a position.
Destroyers will have to. It will depend on the radius. They'd have to make it really short, like shorter than radar range, basically, right? If it was like only 8 kilometers, that could help. If it's something like 10, 12, it's probably you're gonna get deleted anyway. Although I have to say, like, if it's only 10, for example, like a ship at 12 kilometers is a big threat to destroyers still. So if they make it short enough, it could help. But what's concerning me is also that they're going to have dedicated spotting planes, because I presume that those spotting planes will linger for a while and will spot even better than the other planes. And if you drop that on top of like a Shimakaze, it's not like a Shimakaze is going to shoot them down.
So, yeah, it doesn't say anything about how easy these are going to be to shoot down, if they're going to be like fighters in terms of having just a health bar that can be chipped away, if they're going to last for longer or shorter, or what kind of spotting range they're going to have. So there's not a lot of detail at the moment about what they're thinking about and what they're going into this testing kind of thing.
Yep. So depending on the numbers they choose and how the new spotting planes work, it could be a buff to carrier spot. Because, I mean, I highly doubt that there will be something ultra long range, so probably safe at 20 kilometers. So it might still be a benefit for cruisers that get spotted long range. But if they get like better spotting aircraft, and then that spotting aircraft will spot you still at like 15 kilometers, right? Or like relay the information 15 kilometers, that means it's going to be a nightmare for destroyers, because carriers can easier like light up a cap and just keep destroyers spotted. So it depends on how they do this and how they do the numbers. It's a weird concept, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up buffing carriers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they didn't just use the idea that they had with radar, for example, where you have a delay in kind of relaying the information to your allies. Like that would, to me, have made a little bit more sense, but I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, the problem with a delay is, right, I mean, radar has a somewhat limited duration and range. So if you get a delay, as a destroyer can react, maybe set out of the radar, or it's easier survive the duration if it's a short duration radar and everybody else gets a delayed chance to shoot at you. While with planes, I mean, they just stick around. If you get spotted 3 seconds later, it's gonna do nothing.
It would have to, it would have to be a long enough duration. Like, the main benefit would be that you could at least start shooting some of the planes down right away, kind of thing. So at the point when you're then spotted, you have already done some of the work, and it takes like there's then hopefully less of a time when you are spotted. But I suppose the main beneficiary of that would be destroyers rather than cruisers. I don't know how you would do that to like not over advantage cruisers with generally having better AA, but at least shooting down fighters. But it's presuming that the reconnaissance drops do work like fighters. Like I assume what they're thinking is you have to fly your attack squad and drop the recon planes like you would with fighters, rather than just being able to select a place on the map for your recon planes to pop up every so often.
Yep, presumably. Yeah, so honestly, like I'm not optimistic about this at all. They do internal testing and we see what come out with it, and could be it could be a nerf to carrier spotting, could be a buff to carrier spotting. They are vague enough that we just don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely very lacking in details at the moment. So we'll see. We'll see what comes out of it when we learn a bit more.
Well, then next I think we have Santa Crate update. So basically they've now given details about the Santa Crates, about the drop rates, all of them, and there is even like a guaranteed drop mechanic now. So if you buy enough and you get unlucky, you are guaranteed to get a drop. But honestly, they are. It requires a lot of crates.
Yeah, you'd have to be potentially dropping a fair bit of money to get the. Like it's definitely 100% sunk cost fallacy at that point. They're hoping that you've been, that you've got enough spare doubloons or money or whatever that you're just like, oh well, I've spent this much, I might as well spend a bit more and get the guaranteed one. So it's definitely a double-edged thing. Like it's nice that it's there, but if it's where does it give the numbers? I'm trying to find it. Does it say how many you need specifically? I did skim over this article, but
it says like for the small gifts you need 99 for guaranteed drop. For the big ones you need 26, and for the megas you need 14. So it needs a rather large amount of them. Yes. So you need to get very unlucky. Because if you look at it, the premium or special ship has 2.5% chance to drop, right, on the smallest rate. But you only get the guaranteed one after 99, right? At this point, you should have gotten like 2 or 3 ships already.
Yes.
So you have to get very unlucky. So it's not it's not something where they'd be like on about the a bit more than the average drop rate. If you're just getting a little bit unlucky, then get your guaranteed. It's like, if you get seriously, you need a very serious bad luck strike.
Yeah.
To kick.
Like for that particular, like setting it 99 seems kind of almost specifically targeted at the whales that are going to buy things in bulk, and like here's an extra thing that you're guaranteed to get. I
mean, it's sort of a bit failing the safety net thing of guaranteed drop mechanics.
Yeah,
because they said that you not just have to get unlucky, you have to get really unlucky for it to kick it. But at least it's there, I suppose.
Yeah, we have the solid numbers. So
yeah, everybody can see the numbers now and can make a choice. And it's like even split off, like we can see in the small, if there's a 2.5 chance to get a ship, but tier 5 to 7 is more likely with 2%. And then tier 8 to tier 9 is 0.4%. And then getting a tier 10 and the rare ship is only 0.1%. So
I'm sure somebody somewhere, now that we know the exact numbers, is going to be already figuring this out in their spreadsheet of, but especially once we know what the prices of these will be, because we don't yet, but they'll figure out what the best bang for the buck is in terms of, buy X number of these boxes and have Y chance of getting these rewards. So we'll see. Somebody somewhere is going to be figuring out the maths of the optimal way of doing it, which is not something people have been able to do up until now because we didn't know drop rates.
Also, what's interesting is... Oh, yeah, sorry.
The Black Friday ones, I suppose somebody probably did sit down and do that as well, but if they did, I missed it. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, what I just noticed is that if you already have all the ships from the list and the Santa gift container drops an item from the ships group, you receive the following compensation, and it's steel, right? You don't get the doubloons anymore, which is, I feel like, not as generous. Like for a small gift, if you get a ship and you already have you already have all the ships, you get like 250 steel.
The doubloons would be nicer, so that definitely feels like steel, okay, I guess. But it's not like it's huge amounts of steel.
Maybe they're hoping that some people that are really desperate for steel will buy hundreds of crates with all the ships already. Just so... I mean, technically with this you can buy steel if you have all the ships, right? So if you are like a super whale.
Yeah. Because it's quite a long list, just looking at the ships. And there are some decent ships on that list, certainly. But yeah, it also remains to be seen, and we don't know if that's the case just from looking at this article, if it's going to be like in previous years with, the Makarov, if there is some kind of short preference list thing where there's certain ships that, are much more likely to drop than others. for each type of container.
I mean,
I guess we'll see.
I think they would have mentioned it in the article, but what we see is right that they have different drop rates for ship, right? So, for example, tier 5 to tier 7 is always more like if you get a ship, it's very likely that you get tier 5 to tier 7. So instead of having like a short list like that, they just have the different tiers at different drop rates.
Yeah, they do give an overall percentage chance, and then they break it down per tier.
So I think they've replaced the shortlist with this, right? Instead of just having like 5, they make just the lower tier ships more likely.
Because they're trying to replace people more with the higher tier ones. And you can get doubloons as a drop from them anyway, but the Mega Gift one, it's maximum 2,500, and it's only a 5% chance, so it's not. In fact, it's 5% chance for each of them. It's just the doubloons amount goes down. So there's not there's a chance you might get really lucky and open a bunch and get a bunch of doubloons back, but at 5%, it's not a particularly high chance. They have removed that guarantee of getting some doubloons if you get doubles of ships. So it's not bad overall, but that in particular does feel a bit stingier than previous years.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to see what the pricing for those boxes is.
Yeah. So we have probably the biggest news of this particular set of articles in that Italian destroyers have been announced from tier 2 to tier 10, along with a Pan-American tier 8 premium battleship. Those are all in testing. Now we'll look at some of these numbers, but we have managed to get Drakenfell back next week, in the coming week, it'll be Thursday, so he'll be able to talk about the history of the actual ships. And most of them, it seems to indicate most of them did actually exist.
Yeah, I've heard that tier 10 was actually a cruiser and not a destroyer. But I think Jack will have a lot to talk about this.
Some of the French large destroyers and the Italian ones, they kind of really blurred the line between what you would call a cruiser and a destroyer. So we have, where are we? Tiers 2 to 7 and tier 10 are based on actual ships. So it's basically tier 8 and tier 9 that are some form of blueprint ship.
So interesting question from Love Michael. Do we think that with the very short range guns they will be viable at all? I mean, the stats is something that we obviously want to talk about here. And yes, that is a very interesting choice for them, is because they all seem to be like YOLO boats, right?
Yeah, short range guns, long range torpedoes. They've all got exhaust generators.
Yeah, what's interesting is that they don't have very good concealment, because that's the one thing that I feel like will really hurt them, right? They have bad concealment, which means they have to rely on their smokescreen, sort of-ish. But that makes them blind as well. So it's weird. And like, having just very short range guns and bad concealment is, who do you like? What's your target, right? And how do you, like, if you want to sink other destroyers, they'll see you coming and they'll just turn tail and run away. And you don't have any tools to detect them if they smoke up or anything. And, you can't just run after them, they'll keep you spotted. So if you run after them with a smoke screen, then you are yourself spotting anyway. It's like, I haven't quite figured out what one would do with them.
They're definitely not the Paolo Emilio style YOLO boat where you run in and unleash a barrage of really damaging torpedoes at close range. Like, they don't. I'm just looking through some of the numbers now, and they're all very slow.
Exactly,
torpedo speeds.
I think they're like the cruiser torpedoes, right?
Maybe even slower than that. I don't. I'd have to bring up the Italian cruisers too.
They tend to have rather slow torps, but I don't know the stats by heart. But yeah, if you look at, like, for example, at tier 10, right? 56 knot torpedoes at tier 10, that's just very slow. That's a respectable range of 13.5, which is interesting because, like, there you have to YOLO for your guns.
That's only just above what the, what's it called? The German one. I think they're actually a bit slower, but they're only a little bit slower by a couple of knots.
Those are very bad torpedoes for close-range fighting because, you know, they are so slow that they are easily done.
Yeah.
So they don't synergize well with your guns, and your guns don't synergize well with your concealment. So
I had to look at the one existing ship we have in game. I mean, the Leone at tier 6, which I think is HE and AP, but that has I don't know if the range is even that bad, but it kind of relies on just lobbing out lots of slow torpedoes fairly close in succession and hoping that you actually hit something. But that has a regular smoke. In fact, that actually has quite a long-lasting smoke. It's more like a US smoke. Let's see if I can find where it is in my lineup. So artillery, that's 12.1 kilometers with its guns. So it's not even like it's short-range guns. But I think they made it rather... Yeah, it's nearly a 10-second reload. But the torpedoes there, 54 knots, 12 kilometers, and it reloads every 60 seconds. So it looks like they've looked at the Leone's torps and kind of sort of taken that as the pattern. But yeah, the guns are going to be even shorter range. In fact, they'll be by far the shortest range guns of any destroyer line. I don't think there's anything to compare them to.
Yeah, I mean, and also, like, when we look at, for example, the tier 10, you have like 8 135mm guns and a SAP damage of 3050. Like, if you hit an enemy destroyer with those guns, that's not gonna buff out.
Yes. But, you know, how are you gonna... Like, you've got to get in close enough. Like, they're probably going to outspot you, and it then becomes a matter of, you know, can you run them down? And it does have 41 knots, and you'll be able to buff that a bit with captain skills. But yeah, the emergency engine power only lasts for 25 seconds, so you've got a very, very short duration speed boost.
Also, it's interesting that like your detectability is bigger than your gun range. I mean, you obviously might take skills for that to increase your gun range and decrease your detectability, but you're spotted from further away than your guns.
And these torpedoes, I mean, 13,900. Other people have damage sort of tier 5, tier 6 around that. So, I mean, 56 knots, 90-second reload. Yeah, I don't... These are odd. These are very odd. These are not sit in a smoke cloud and ping away at people.
I mean,
ships.
You know, with 8.5 kilometer, like, if you take the captain skill for range and the module for range at tier 10, like, how much more range do you get, percentage-wise?
Let me just double check that, but I feel... Is it like 16 with the module and... let's check what it is for destroyers. Where are we? Gun fire control system. Yeah, 16%. And then for the captain skill, which is what, BFT? No, main battery and AA expert. That gives you a further 20%. So 36% total. Whatever that adds up to on top of it.
So you get to about 11.5.
Okay, that's around what I would have guessed, which is only that's getting to what other destroyers have without any upgrades.
I mean,
some destroyers have like 13 without upgrades. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that with those guns, that's you probably can hurt destroyers really badly, right? If you have somebody else who does the spotting for you and you hang back like a little bit like a cruiser, but you will have very little room for error because you are seen so easily.
Yeah.
And then you just devastate something. I don't know.
The one kind of saving grace is you do seem to get a pretty, like, they're giving you Pan-Asian numbers of charges for the exhaust, the smoke generator. So it's at tier 10, it's 6. Tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, it's 6. Below tier 7, tier 7 and below, it's 4. So it's a decent number. In fact, tier 6, tier 5, you only get 3 of them. Tier 3, you get 3 of them. So yeah, at lower tiers, you really don't get a lot to work with. But at the higher tiers, you at least get a reasonable number. Yeah, this definitely feels like another very niche line. Like, these could have quite powerful guns with their SAP, but being able to actually get into a position to use those powerful guns is going to be tricky. And it's not, like, 5-second reload is definitely nothing special at tier 10. There's no reload booster. Just for the shortness of range, which is going to be expensive to overcome. I mean, it's... Yeah.
So you want to have a good laugh? Look at the tier 6 Italian destroyer. And the main battery.
Avieri. 6.7 kilometers.
Yeah, now look at main battery before then. It has one gun.
Oh, what? Okay.
Is that, like, now let's look at the picture. Is this a typo? Or is this...
Maybe it looks like it's a... Looking at the thing, it looks like it's a single... It must be. There's a single twin turret at the front, and then...
Yeah,
maybe a single turret, or is it 2 single turrets at the rear? That looks like it's a typo on the stats. I don't think it's a single gun.
Yeah, it would be a bit weird. I mean, I could
argue it shows more than a single gun.
I mean, the back could be like a secondary, but it should be at least 1 twin turret, right?
Yeah, I think they've put that in wrong.
Because that would be hilarious. I mean, it would also be unplayable probably, but like having just one gun with 6.7.
Yeah, one gun with a 5-second reload. Good luck. Yeah, so this is an odd-looking line, to be sure, and I think we've got to the stage where, given that they're still trying to give things a national flavour, we're going to get, like, if they're trying to make them gimmicky in some ways, we are going to get these very odd-looking lines.
I mean, it's just that I don't think with the detection range they have, there's going to be... let's just say it doesn't feel like it's going to be all that. Like,
yeah. Actually, even looking at the torpedo damage, the Leone's torpedoes, even though they're slow at 54 knots, like the regular tier 6 gets 56 knots, but the torpedoes do way less damage and they have 2 kilometers less range. I don't know. This feels like a weird concept. It really does.
I mean, that torpedo, like, what they look like to me is, right, you sit at the back and you launch your torpedoes from range in circles, pretty much at the edge of your torpedo range, probably, because if you go close in, you get spotted, until you get bored, and then you just YOLO in with the smoke and you hope you take something down before you die.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the idea behind these, that they start off the match being quite passive, just putting torpedoes downrange, and we know how, literally hit or miss an experience that can be. And then towards the end, where you have more damaged enemies and fewer enemies, presuming that you're winning, that then you can go in and put the guns to better use with the shorter range. But that does presume that you're winning and that you can actually somehow help your team get to that point.
Yes.
With these long-ranged, slow torpedoes that you're just throwing out intermittently.
I mean, the thing with the speed is you'll just have to try to catch another. Because, as impressive as your gun power might be, you aren't going to win against a cruiser or something.
No.
You're
very low health.
Yeah, it looks like you are meant to just be farming destroyers, but the destroyer sees you coming and you can't do anything about it. And you are moderately fast, so you might be able to catch them if they run, but then you need to survive getting spotted part. So you need to catch a destroyer with its pants down somewhat and hope that your smoke lets you survive long enough to. But then again, you can't deactivate your smoke, right? If you try to YOLO destroyer with your smoke on, you can't even see it.
Yes. So unless you trigger it, you can't. Yeah, you can't run towards an enemy destroyer, keep them spotted, and it's not like you have hydro or anything like that. So
you need somebody else to spot the destroyer. Then you can press the smoke, and then you can YOLO in during your smoke, getting close enough to maybe sink it, and then hope that for a miracle you can disengage again.
Maybe that's the idea behind these, is that they are pure division ships, that you don't take them solo. But there are lots of people that only play solo. So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird.
I mean, they could also be changed during testing heavily. And right now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some changes, but we all know how
I'm sure there will be, but they rarely scrap if they've come up with a concept, they rarely scrap the entire concept. In fact, I don't know if I can really think of any major cases where they've gone into the pre-release stats of the line and then completely changed what the line is about.
Yeah,
they've done that sometimes with individual premium ships, but
they did that, for example, with the British cruisers back in the day. It was a long time ago.
Kind of, yeah. That's about the only example I can think of was removing the HE rather than dropping the smoke.
So
that wasn't so much changing the entire concept as kind of refining the concept, I would argue.
Well, I'd say the concept of HE spam in smoke, well, it's sort of a concept. Because you can't angle against it and stuff.
I think the smoke was more central to the concept than the HE was in that particular instance. But we're probably
and also
for
the Russian battleships, right? The original concept with being very accurate at lower ranges, but at close ranges, but very inaccurate at longer ranges with the specialized dispersion curve and so that was mostly scrapped. Concept to make them just a regular.
Is that not still somewhat the case, though? Do they not still have their own dispersion?
Well, sure, but every battleship, certain nations share usually dispersion curves, but every ship gets close at close range, right? There wasn't the real concept was to make them like real brawlers and very bad at long ranges, and that, as we know, claim to be.
So yeah, overall, this feels like an odd line, and we'll definitely see some changes. I can't imagine they won't get at least some buffs to either their range or their reload time, or maybe a buff to concealment. It just feels like they've got quite a bad combination of stats in some cases. Also, the Adriatico, I just realised that looks really Soviet, that superstructure. But that is one of the paper ones, I suppose.
Yeah, that looks interesting.
Yeah, look at that superstructure and tell me that doesn't remind you of the Tashkent or something.
Yeah. Did they say on what they... they even say in many respects similar to a Soviet destroyer leader Tashkent.
Oh, yeah. So Italian guns, but, Tashkent. if they wanted to make them kind of Soviet style, more open water gunboats with, SAP instead of HE, that could have been a thing, but they have HE. So
honestly, I do like the concept of basically a very close range boat that needs going, because like the French, the Soviets, that they're so annoying to deal with when they just zip around. They don't provide that much utility for the team, and while they are definitely good ships and can deal a lot of damage, I feel like that's not really more we need.
Yeah, I think if they were going to do that with this line, though, I mean, the one big notable thing that they don't have is a heal.
Yeah, I feel like...
Although the hit points are definitely above average for their tier, I don't think they're that above average.
Yeah, true. I feel like what they need is just better concealment, right? I'd like the general concept of, as I said, like a very low gun range, but you need the tools to go in, right? If you had just very low gun range and very good concealment, so you go in, you shoot, you're easy to escape from in a sense because they're very short of the range, and then you maybe if you get it gets too hot, you use your smoke to escape or something. It's like, I feel like with the detectability, right, you just, if you use your smoke to close in or trying to, I mean, one, you're blind while you do it, but then you don't have a smoke, and then you're gonna die because you can't escape. And if you keep it to escape, then you just go in and you're going to pummel so hard until you are in range.
And it doesn't really feel like you have the torpedo hitting power to even really do that part, except against an already quite damaged target.
Yeah, and I mean, they are so slow, so you won't get a lot of hits anyway.
Yeah.
So even if you spam a lot of time torpedoes from range, it's going to be a very frustrating experience.
Anyway, it's just an odd idea generally.
Yes.
Whatever it is they have in mind there. The other new ship we have on this page, it'll be interesting to look at this actually, and when we have Drac here on Thursday and talk about actual Italian naval doctrine.
Oh yeah,
and I'm sure a lot of it will come down to what the French were doing at the same time, because that was Italy's kind of main nearest naval rival was obviously France, and we already have that somewhat in game with like how the or not even in game, but the Dunkirks were built to counter the Graf Spee kind of thing. So I suspect a lot of the Italian design philosophy will come down to what were the French doing and kind of reacting to that and trying to outdo the French in various ways. So yeah, it'll be interesting to hear about that. But yeah, the other ship we have on this page is the Atlantico, and it doesn't really give much about that in terms of its history, other than to say it's armed with British 15-inch guns and American dual-purpose and AA guns. So it's, I mean, the turrets themselves do look like the Hood or the Monarch. I guess the Hood's, particularly the Hood's twin 15-inch guns, the Queen Elizabeth's 15-inch guns, they're very, very similar looking to that. But in terms of the rest of the ship, I'm not sure. So it might be this is some kind of, I mean, the last time we had Drac on, we were talking about, the Vickers line of ships. So it's quite possible that this is some shipyard design that was offered to various South American countries. So it could be like Vickers, for instance, or one of the major British ship lines. Because some shipyards, some companies did do that. I think Ansaldo in Italy also offered their designs to various other countries. So it might well be that it's a sort of British-based design, but aimed at the South American market.
I mean, it's interesting because there's a project of a battleship with British main caliber guns and secondary armament, as well as American dual-purpose AA artillery. So it sounds like they've even, I don't know what they base, if they took the base hull of a project of a battleship that was planned and then switched out both the main guns and the AA from other nations.
Maybe. I mean, the fact that it's American, like specifically specified American secondaries, they could have done the thing they do sometimes, which is a fictional refit, where it's some 1920s design that's been updated and they've put 1940s American AA guns on it.
It sounds like they took a paper ship concept and then refitted the paper ship concept. They were like, what if the paper ship concept would have been built and then later have been refitted?
It does specifically mention it's a long-range secondary armament, so we'll see what that means. I mean, it's a Tier 8 ship. The fact that it's American 127s means, does it perhaps, is it going to be a kind of counterpart to something like the Massachusetts, but overall slower?
I guess we have stats for it.
It does have stats. Yeah, I should actually look.
It has 7.5 kilometer secondaries, so is that the standard range 48?
Just double check.
The problem is that the US secondaries aren't that great anymore. Ever since the RFHE nerf, the US secondaries have suffered a lot.
Yes, but it does. We do have some. The 127s are going to be the more numerous, but it also mentions some 234 millimeter secondaries.
Oh yeah, it says 8 times 2, 230. Oh, that's okay. That's going to be interesting. That's an interesting secondary.
234 millimeters. That's 9.2 inches, something like that. Those will be, the biggest. Those will be. It's basically got 2 heavy cruisers strapped to the side in terms of those secondary cuts.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean,
we'll see. I mean, does it say what dispersion those secondaries have? Let's have a quick look.
I don't see anything about that.
No. Reload time, yeah, if the main batteries for 10 15-inch guns, 1.8 Sigma, 28-second reload, that's not bad. Quite a decent turret traverse. Yeah, the 234s are all 7.5. Chance to cause fire 21% with those 234mm guns.
I mean,
maximum's 5 knots. So yeah, this does feel like it's meant to be. This is going to be, my guess, some kind of 1920s design that's got a fictional refit.
I mean, the thing is, what I like is that they designed a brawler basically, and they with secondaries, and they gave it something like Hydra. I mean, we'll have to see how tanky it turns out to be.
Yeah,
but
yeah, we don't really know what armor scheme it's got or anything like that. Right, 7.5 is the same base range as the Massachusetts. So you would be able to get it to max secondary range, same as the Massachusetts. So, if you like your secondary spec ships, this looks like it'll be a good one, except it's only got a 25-knot base speed, so it's going to be hard to get in and out of engagements. It's kind of...
Oh, yeah, I only just saw that. That's not so great.
Yeah, that's kind of around the levels of the Queen Elizabeths, I think. Or like Nagata. I think Nagata is around 25 knots.
Could be, yeah. I mean, obviously this stuff needs testing, and we'll see. But I love secondary battleships. So
it'll be interesting to. This is definitely one of the more interesting looking premiums that we've had.
Yeah. And yeah, the 21% fire chance on a secondaries might need refinement.
But I mean, that's nasty. How much does it say? How much pen those shells are going to have? I don't think you need IFHE for those to have decent pen.
I mean, 234s. That should have they should have better pens than the usual heavy.
Yeah, unless
cruisers.
It's artificially nerfed. It's heavy cruiser pen.
But we don't know the reload, right?
Pretty strong AA as well, at least in the short and mid range. Surface detectability 14.7, so not especially sneaky. And it has got a hydro. So that looks interesting to me. That does look interesting to me.
Yeah. Depending on how well it tanks, that could be a fun ship.
Yeah. Two Goliaths worth of fire shots. Yeah, it's the same caliber as the Goliaths, isn't it? 234 millimeters. Yes. I mean, you'd have to be within, like, what's the maximum you can get on the Massachusetts? Is it 11.5? 12.1? Something like that.
Yeah.
We still don't, like, it doesn't tell us what the accuracy of those secondary guns is going to be.
And the reload.
That'll make a difference. Yeah, or the reload. So that obviously will make a difference. And it's not going to be a particularly fast rate of fire with those 234mm guns.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's like a 12-second or 15-second reload on those secondary space reloads, right? So they will have a high... and then not all of them will hit, obviously, because the accuracy won't be that great. But, I mean, it's definitely an interesting-looking secondary battery.
Yes. It definitely is. I wonder if those are specifically British 234 mils, or if they are some actual or imaginary American ones.
I think there's a British main caliber and secondary, and not only the anti-air is American.
Yes, it does say that. Yeah, British main caliber and secondary as well as dual purpose AA. So yeah, the dual purpose US 127s, and then the rest is okay. So those probably will have similar-ish stats to the 9.2s that we have at Tier 9 and Tier 10. And Tier 8 as well, including the Cheshire, of course.
Yes, Stuff Michael. We've basically discussed the whole balancing thing. When was it, like 2 podcasts ago, I think?
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, it remains to be seen what Wargaming does with all of this, because they are preliminary stats. And while they are very unwilling to scrap any of their concepts, we will see what stat changes they come up with.
Just looking at, I can already see they are slightly nerfed in comparison to the cruiser 234mm guns.
Okay.
Which have 25% fire chance. But Cheshire at Tier 8, 12.5 second reload. Drake has actually got an 18-second reload. But it's got, I think, triple turrets, and Cheshire's only got the twin turrets. So it's probably going to be somewhere in between those two. Goliath has got, again, triple turrets, 18.5 second.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's going to be somewhere in between the 12.5 and the 18.5 seconds, I would imagine. It's unlikely to be faster than 12.5 seconds.
Although, I mean, you can obviously buff it with, captain skill.
Yeah, well, that's true, yeah. 59 millimeters of HE penetration as well.
Pretty decent for a secondary.
Yeah. Definitely. Slightly nerfed in HE chance, and we have no idea what the rate of fire is going to be. That looks like a ship I would actually get, though.
Oh yeah, like this is definitely something I'm interested. Anything that has good secondaries is something that interests me.
Oh yeah, someone points out the British HE does have the improved pen, so it might be less than 59.
I mean, if it's 50 or something, you'll still be happy.
Is it a 5th or a 6th? What the standard one is?
I don't know.
Chat will know. Oh, that's not right. Anyway, someone will be able to figure it out.
I mean, we'll still have to
can't
see
do
anyway
and podcast.
if they change anything on that further.
Yeah. And I've poked Drac about that as well, so he might have some idea of what that ship is based on. So is there anything more we want to talk about with the Italians, or should we move on to the next?
There was the premium still that we have. Is there anything different about the premium? I'm just looking at real quick. Looks pretty much
the
like
FR something.
Yes,
FR25.
It is 139 millimeters. That's pretty big. That's even bigger than the Tier 10, right?
That's a French caliber, isn't it?
Maybe.
139 millimeters. Yeah. Still HE and SAP, but actually less. Oh well, it's a smaller caliber, so less SAP damage than the 130. No, actually, no. That is a bigger caliber, but it's less SAP damage.
Yeah, it's a bigger caliber with less damage.
And 1 millimeter more penetration. Okay.
I mean, 139 at Tier 7 is interesting.
That the main difference seems to be that has an actual standard firing range.
Also,
12.7 kilometers.
Faster torpedoes with less range.
Yeah. So still the same ammo choices, but just that will play more like a standard ship, although it still has the exhaust smoke generator.
Yeah, it's about a mix of what you'd expect from a standard destroyer and the Italian flavor.
It actually has better damage torps than the Tier 10.
Of course it does.
But 8 kilometers is, well, at Tier 7, you're still going to run into some radar, but 8 kilometers at Tier 7 is still, it's not terrible.
And 36 speed.
Yeah, what does it say?
So not that fast.
It's not super fast, yeah. Where does it say the service detectability? 7.2 km. Not great. That'll be, what, 6.6?
Although that fits in with a lot of the, isn't that like Mahan or something like?
That's not especially awful for Tier 7. At least it can stealth drop.
It can stealth drop, and it can obviously, with the exhaust smoke, it's actually probably better than like a Mahan in that regard, because if you sail straight nose into someone and it detects you, just press a smoke and can turn in safety.
Yeah.
Interesting thing. Would be fun. Makes more sense, I think, than the other designs.
It kind of does, yeah. But it's odd that it's got French guns rather. I'm presuming they're French guns. I mean, 139 is definitely a French destroyer caliber.
I mean, maybe the FR25 stands for that it's something French.
Quite possibly.
Actually, could I have a flavor text for this? Oh yeah, it's a Gepard class destroyer originally built for the French Navy, with its anti-aircraft guns replaced by Italian ones. So basically, they took a French destroyer and replaced the AA, and now they call it an Italian.
Ah, okay. So it's the Gepard, which is normally at Tier 6, I think.
Possibly. I lost track of the names of the French.
Pretty sure that's normally a Tier 6, so it's an up-tiered Gepard. Huh, okay. Not anything especially new in terms of it, like being a thing we already have in game. Just with SAP and the exhaust smoke. But like you say, it does make more sense than the
other line.
Kind of. Yeah. There is a short, which is still Italian, but there's a short blog about change to the Giuseppe Verdi, which is getting a nerf to its smoke generator. That's the upcoming. I think the Tier 9 Italian. Or is that what that's already in the game? Hang on, let me check. Is that the one they added that's... No, that's not the Verdi, is it? Hang on. I'm getting confused. What's the Tier 9 Italian that's not the Lepanto? Marco Polo. There we go.
So what's the Giuseppe Verdi then? Is there another premium Tier 9 battleship Italian that I'm unaware of? Possibly.
Definitely. I'm sure it's been mentioned in some previous dev blog, but I don't know if we have any concrete anything on it at the moment.
I mean, I guess it's not too exciting anyway, because the smoke on battleships is very situational.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot the search box on the blog is completely useless. Oh, well.
Someone chat said it's Italian with 406mm guns, heavier shells than Lepanto. But did the Marco also have 400? What caliber did the Marco Polo have?
I think is that 15-inch or is that also still... No, that's still 16-inch guns.
And it's also 400. So how does it... It's just as heavy... Is it like a Marco Polo with heavier shells? Is that what is the difference?
Unless it's some different project entirely.
Good question.
No,
we'll see whenever it releases, I guess.
Right. So that takes us to the last of
No, Minor Resistant Water. The Marco Polo definitely has bigger guns.
Yeah, Marco Polo is 406 mils, but it doesn't have the smoke screen. But I still prefer the Marco to the Lepanto, to be honest.
I feel like they are both equally crap.
The Lepanto's got the 15-inch guns.
Yeah, I mean, at least the Marco Polo can overmatch in those.
Right. Yeah, so then we have details of the next early access, which is Pan-Asian cruisers. I've actually bumped into a couple of these being tested already.
Oh, yeah. I've already deathstruck a few.
And yeah, they are... I mean, they're like cruisers. They are pretty squashy. But some of the camos look quite nice, I have to say. Art department, once again, coming through. These Silk Dawn kind of white, gold and red camos do look very nice.
Oh yeah. That's a camo. Like the German special camo was pretty bad, I felt. Yes. That's a pretty good one.
Kind of white. Well, is it even white? It's kind of white/cream. The red and gold. I like it. It's not too overpowering. It's got some nice, it's got a nice clean look to it. And then there is also, now I don't really like the Griffin camo for the Plymouth, which is going to be one of the clan token ones. But we've also got a special camo for the Chengmu, which is based on I don't know, not medieval, later than medieval, kind of whatever era that would be, or I think either Japanese or Korean ships, but it's kind of like a wooden ship look, which I think that looks really nice.
That's amazing.
And there's also the announcement, I mean, we already knew this was going to be in, but we've now got a picture of it, is the Sackville Camo, which, of course, we hardly need to go over that whole mess again, but that's also going to be in the game with the 0.11 patch as well. So we're getting that, and the actual Yukon patch that, or was it Flag? I can't remember, that Chibitsu designed. And I mean, I guess Little White Mouse will at least be able to then consider the matter kind of finally closed, but it's been a pretty sorry saga getting to this point. The fact that it took so long, the fact that it was almost like pulling nails to get Wargaming to get to the point where they would put this camo in the game as an apology is just...
Especially since it was pre-made and they only had
And it's not like it's an actual flavorful historical camo that's going to mean something to Canadians, and it was handed to them on a plate, and there was absolutely no reason for them to tone it down and be obstinate, but they were obstinate about it anyway. So
for half a year or so.
Yeah, so it was 100% just them being really petty about things. And the fact that it's finally in the game is good, but it's kind of hard to give them that much credit at this point, given the road that we've gotten to get here.
No, I don't think they deserve any credit for doing that now, right? It's like a more or less final thing.
Yeah.
And on a side note, the Griffin for Plymouth, is that like based on, do you know, is that based on, I don't know, is that like an official symbol of Plymouth?
It feels vaguely heraldic. I'm not sure about the kind of battlements fore and aft, but I'm pretty sure. Let's look this up.
Yeah, it looks like some sort of what you'd expect from a medieval symbol or something.
It's either going to be to do with the British coat of arms, or it might be like there's specifically one for Plymouth that has a griffin on it. I'm not really sure. But I know it is a very common heraldic symbol, so it's going to be inspired by some bit of heraldry somewhere. Let's bring up the British Royal Coat of Arms. I know there's a separate one for Scotland. I'm pretty sure it's like a lion and a unicorn for the royal family.
And Mission World says Plymouth has 4 towers on sigil of the city.
Yeah, it's probably more to do with the city of Plymouth itself. Yeah, it does have... Okay, it's got 4 towers, but it doesn't have any kind of griffin, so I'm not sure what the griffin specifically refers to.
Also, just really like the color scheme also doesn't quite match, I guess.
It's a bit busy looking for me, to be honest. Seeing it from far away with that color scheme, I would see the red and yellow and think it's some fast food chain or something. Like the griffin itself isn't actually that clear overall. It feels a bit too, I don't know, a bit too muddled, a bit too busy.
You think they are selling you fried griffins?
Maybe.
I mean, the thing is, I really like symbols like that, like a griffin, but it's not that easy to spot. I feel like the problem, I mean, maybe you'd see it better from a different angle, but the way they blasted it over the ship, it feels like the image is lost a bit because it's so split up over the different decks.
Yeah.
I felt like they could have been better with making the symbol a little smaller or somewhere plastering somewhere around it where it's better visible. But maybe if you turn the camera...
You compare that to the dragon symbology on the still screen perma camos.
Yeah.
That's nice and clear.
Yes.
It's not massively busy. You know, you can tell what it is. You can tell...
it's more tasteful.
Yeah. I much prefer that.
The other one is more like kitsch. Is that an English word?
Yeah, even the commemorative patch and the commemorative flag for those, you know, they're quite nice. I like that red and gold, Eastern dragon looking flag that's coming with the thing. They're also changing the dragon port for some reason, which the main change I can see there is that the head is going to be more a kind of, I guess it's supposed to be more like a crystal color, as opposed to at the moment where it's sort of supposed to be semi-realistic, I guess.
I wonder when they say updated the ports, did they give it the whole visual overhaul like the other ports that they've overhauled? Like with the new
Maybe. I mean,
graphics?
the Dragon's definitely going to be different. They might be doing different lighting, and there's going to be a little bit more. Like at the moment, there's like a monastery or something in the background, or a temple or something, and then they've got some actual port stuff in alongside all the temple and the pagoda stuff. So, yeah, it might just be changing the lighting overall, because at the moment it's kind of quite dusky lighting, and that looks really quite daylight. That's morning or kind of afternoon lighting, I would say. So tonally, it's going to be quite different.
Then another thing.
I would prefer if they kept it more kind of evening-looking lighting, because we have quite a lot of them that are very daylight looking at the moment. There's not that many that are.
I would like more evening. Like a night port with like the moon out and something, you know.
That would be nice. Yeah, I mean, when they've done the event New York ones, where it's been nighttime and you've got all the lights. Like at the moment, it's still the Black Friday one, so you've got all of everything lit up and you've got the spotlights illuminating the ship. Yeah, that's quite nice. Another nighttime one that's all lit up would be quite nice.
I mean, imagine all those lanterns at nighttime at this port. It would look so beautiful.
I don't know, maybe somebody will mod it. You know, you can get modded ports that have different lighting, so somebody might mod it to make it a nighttime one. So what else have we got on this page?
Asymmetric Battles.
Yes. I think this is a thing they've mentioned previously, and it's a thing that's been in World of Tanks previously as a concept. A long time ago at this point, but
I mean, I've tried them in the past in Warships, but they never got the balancing right. And the last time I tried to bring them back, then they cancelled it and delayed it because it wasn't. Not sure what they've changed these days, but.
So the details we've got are it's going to be tier 9 and tier 10, 6 to 8 ships, and then the second team will be either tier 7 or tier 8 with the 9 to 12 ships. And in order to get play with the tier 9 and tier 10 ships, you'll first have to play the tier 7 and 8 ships.
Yeah, so otherwise everyone wants to play the higher tiers.
Yeah. We've also got rental super ships in random battles, because this is the thing now. We've tested subs in random battles, so now we're just going to test more things in random battles. I saw Flamu on Twitter being his usual scathing Flamu self about this.
I mean, to be honest, it's basically what this means is they've now released super ships, right? Because as I've said before, submarines are basically already released, right? We haven't seen a single day without submarines in the game ever since they were tested, and it doesn't look like that's going to change. So they'll keep submarines, I think, indefinitely in the game. They're just adjusting them, and once they say they are ready, they'll make them grindable. But submarines are here to stay, I think, forever. And so probably super ships from now on.
So effectively, it's going to be some tier 11s mixed in with your tier 10s kind of thing.
So for wargaming, it means like the difference between a test and a release is the way you acquire them, not the way like in which battles they are or if they are available to everyone. It's just that if it's released, you need experience to acquire it. If it's tested, then it's easier to acquire. So, you know, it's actually once they are released, there'll probably be less of them around.
Almost, yeah, depending on how you acquire them. It's going to be more time and effort.
So,
yeah, we don't really have many more details to it than that, other than, you know, they feel it's important to get more data.
Yeah, I mean, basically.
It'll be available to rent from random bundles in the armory, and there'll be standard class and tier restrictions on the number of them in battle. So it's basically going to be like how they've done the submarine rentals.
Yeah, it's basically they are now released. What's surprising me is that we haven't seen any change, or have I missed some?
I don't think so. Has there been any recent blogs on super ship
I mean, why
changes?
even bother balancing stuff before you start them, before you release them, right? So. Wargaming has decided that since balancing is an ongoing process, you don't have to start before release, right? Once you release, then you can get into the balancing over the next years.
Yeah.
Also, so far we've carefully analyzed not only data received, but also your feedback, and the current season of ranked battles show that super ships fit the current concept of the game and were warmly welcomed by players. I mean, it's once again this, like, I'm never sure if they are that incompetent or if it's just all like PR speak. Basically, they're like, we have introduced a new shiny, made it so that everyone can get and test the new shiny, and people tested the new shiny, so they must love it. It's like if you offer somebody a free sample and they take it and they taste it and they don't like it, and you're like, well, they took the free sample, so obviously they loved it. You don't go and be like, well, did they enjoy it? You'd be like, well, they took a free sample, so it must be the new favorite food now.
I've just been looking. I don't think there's been anything new on super ships in terms of that since mid-October. That was the last thing I can find, or the most recent thing I can find. The super ship characteristics article, which gives all the various stats as they are at the moment. So, yeah, recent changes.
I mean, the fun thing is, right, most games, like, they start like in alpha or so, and then go to beta and eventually are released, and some just stay in beta forever. World of Warships has come to the point where it's released and now it's regressing back into beta and alpha stages. It's like they've basically reversed the course. They're like, we don't want a finished game on the market. We just try to, unfinish it.
Yeah, let's add more unfinished elements to the game because that's always a popular way to do things. They've obviously seen how all the big AAA publishers are basically releasing games that are still blatantly unfinished, and they're like, you know what? Our game is too complete. We need to add more beta and test elements to the game to keep up with all these big publishers that clearly know what they're doing. Yeah.
Which also brings us to one of our favorite topics ever, Submarine Chains.
Yes.
So basically, they are now changing the sonar ping, and you can now ping multiple ships, but only one ping is sort of active.
Yeah, I don't know how different that makes this from things as they are at the moment. Like, it's the most recent ping that's going to be the active ping, but from my reading of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like if you launched Torps, they will go for the most recent active ping, but if you put out their newer ping, they won't go for that ping? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, so the way I get it, like, when you launch Torps, they launch onto your active ping, right? And then if you change the active ping and ping something else, then they still go after the old ping. Right? So basically, you can't redirect torpedoes. Torpedoes go after the ping that you have when you launched, and then if you ping something else, they don't care. So you can't. What you could do right now is basically you could sort of curve basically you could shoot them at one ship, right? And then you could ping another, and then they would stop tracking the first one. And so you could, I guess. I mean, if you saw that the first target didn't work, you could basically change your target, or you could make them come from another angle or things like that. So what was potentially a skill factor, they have taken away. So now it's really just you launch them on the one thing that's pinged, and then you can like ping another stuff and launch that too. So you can try to attack multiple targets at the same time. Why you'd want to do that, I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I guess it's nice because maybe you have torpedoes on a certain target and they look okay, but I mean, it could be possible that something appears and you need to defend yourself and you need to switch what you shoot at.
Yeah, they've also put down if a ship has an active ping sector and torpedoes are homing to it, it will become inactive when a new ping hits another ship. So are they trying to discourage you from...
But they say ships? No, they say it's still like homing torpedoes only go after the ping sector and continue to so if it becomes inactive. So basically, even though the ping is inactive, they're still home towards that.
Okay.
The only thing is like, I mean, you can't then like re-add them.
Yeah, you can't refresh once they're in the water. So if it's about to run out, then yeah.
I wonder how that goes, right?
Yeah. This all feels like they're fine-tuning a thing that just doesn't work to me, but what do I know?
Yeah, right. I mean, once again, right, they have the concept of pings and they love it so much that no amount of feedback or anything will... they aren't changing the fact that damage con is a very bad way of dealing with it and that a lot of problems with the ping and a lot of criticism and feedback, they're just ignoring all that because they love the ping so much.
Yeah. There's also some notes about detectability.
What's operating depth, by the way? Is that like periscope or is that like below?
I think so. Yes. I think...
Like, wasn't that the case? Like, couldn't you... I mean, operating depth, if it isn't max depth, then like, I mean, the proximity spotting, did that not work in smoke? Or what do I mean there? I mean, guaranteed
acquisition range is 2 kilometer range, isn't it?
Yeah. But doesn't that work right now?
Don't know. I haven't played subs enough, to be honest. I certainly haven't been playing subs and rushing down people in smoke.
Yeah, it's like that you see a sub 2 kilometers away from you in smoke. It's not something that I think I've encountered.
So yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that's going to change things. That seems like quite a minor change. But it also says a ship in smoke can also detect a submarine operating depth from at 2 kilometers. So, okay, if ships in smoke and subs can now both see each other when there's smoke, I guess, at extreme close range.
I mean, yeah, I really don't get it because I would have thought that you can like the proximity spotting. It shouldn't be affected by smoke anyway. So I'm not sure what the change there is, but okay. Also interesting, fix the bug that caused the ship's detectability by depth to increase after firing smoke. Does this mean like a submarine could see it from... How does that work? Could a submarine suddenly see a ship that's firing in smoke from further away from underwater? Like, could a sub in the water right now detect the ship because it's firing from smoke?
Maybe. It kind of seems to be what that is. I don't really know, to be honest. That's the cause the ship's detectability by depth to increase after firing in smoke. So, yes.
I mean, it's good if they're fixing bugs. That's obviously great. But I'm not. The wording isn't clear enough for me to identify what the bug is, and I don't think I've really run or not noticeably run into it to identify this.
So we've also got achievements, small fleets, medium fleet, and large fleet encyclopedia, which we rewarded for participation in special portal activities, which it doesn't mention what they are. So that's something that's happening that you'll get an achievement for, potentially, if you take part, I guess.
I think they just want you to click on news articles or something and they'll give you an achievement in-game in order to do that.
Maybe. Plymouth we already looked at, Yukon. The one thing, I think this ties in with the Chung Mu, is this Commander Yi Sun-sin, who is, I think, actually kind of famous. I mean, we're going obviously, like, this isn't, anyone do with the Second World War or anything like that. It's quite a bit further.
Really? You're trying to tell me that they didn't dress like that in the World War?
Here we go. Korean Admiral. Oh, so it was Korea. Admiral and military general, famed for his victories against the Japanese Navy during the attempted invasions of 1592 to 1598 during the Joseon dynasty. By the way, and I've said this previously, I am all for more historical-based admirals and ship permacamos and ship skins. I am 100% in favor of this, and I'd have obviously liked it to have it more on, either the Royal Navy or the US or the French, but the fact that it's Pan-Asian, this looks like a skin that I would seriously consider getting. Chengdu's not a terrible ship to play, I suppose, but it's a really nice-looking skin, and it's an actual, genuinely historical, significant commander. And it's almost an odd thing that they didn't make this a special commander. It's obviously got its own portrait, but the fact that it doesn't have any special abilities of any kind, which I don't think there are. I mean, there's two named commanders with the white star next to the equivalent of John Doe that have some minor special abilities, but we don't have any actual historical captains in the Pan-Asian line up until this one. So the fact that they don't have any special abilities to go with that almost feels like an odd thing.
It does, because they now have two full lines with the destroyers and the cruisers, so they could definitely get their own. I think every nation should have its own special captain with its special skills. It just feels right. Also, I never really grinded the Pan-Asian destroyers, but this skin makes me really think about it.
It's a really nice skin.
Yeah, it's
just done so well.
And I'd really like to have a flamethrower from that mouth in the front.
I think that was more of a ram, but these were basically sort of armored for their day, but the main armament was, I believe, archers.
Yeah, but didn't they have
this period of ships?
Didn't they have fire?
They probably did have fire ships.
Who had fire ships?
Fire ships were a thing up until through I think the 18th century, but that was more like a hulk that you set on fire and then aimed at the enemy fleet kind of thing. I don't know if there were any that had flamethrowers.
Didn't they have some sort of? I might be utterly mistaken. I'm thinking about Byzantium there. Didn't some of them have some special sort of napalish substance even they used with ships?
Maybe. Here's what they were. I was trying to remember what they were called. It's actually linked in his thing. So turtle ships that's what that particular style of ship was called. It looks like a pretty faithful recreation of all the the fittings and the materials used. The dragon's head's kind of like a figurehead kind of thing.
Yeah,
I does note one version carried a projector that could release a dense toxic smoke that was generated to obscure vision and interfere with the Japanese ability to maneuver and coordinate properly. And apparently a cannon could be fitted to the mouth of the dragon. Although a very early kind of naval cannon. Yeah, and the spikes are apparently entirely historical as well. They were an anti-boarding measure. So not just to keep off pigeons. But yeah, I really, really like that. I absolutely. It's rare that I get to be just completely unalloyed in my, praise and desire for something that Wargaming have done. And of course, it's one of the visual elements things. But yeah, I really hope we get more like this, more historically based kind of wooden warships era of skins and captains. I absolutely would go for more of those. Apparently, you were right. Yes, the Byzantine ore-driven, ore-propelled ships had Greek fire projectors, which I think they were just basically like catapults, small catapults on deck. If I remember correctly. I don't really know that much about my Byzantine. My Mediterranean trimarenes and quimarenes and whatever else of shallow draft ships that were the norm for a very long time.
Byzantines also used pressurized nozzles to project the liquid onto the enemy in a manner resembling a modern flamethrower.
Okay, all right, they did. I for some reason thought it was like catapults, but no, they actually had nozzles.
I remembered something somewhat historical. Now I'm proud of myself.
So yeah, that's cool. I like I said, really wish they had done more with that commander rather than just making it a portrait, but it's a start. We also have some more flags and a Russian commander, Peter Gradov. Again, this just looks like a portrait without anything special about them. I don't know if there's some... This is an actual Russian commander, or if this is just like searching for Peter Gradov doesn't particularly give anything.
I mean, obviously, he must be the most famous Russian ever.
Oh no, that the
probably commanded the historically Petropavlovsk.
There is a Russian poet, actor, translator, and playwright that was called Peter Gradov, but I don't know if that... No mention of any naval connection whatsoever.
I mean, it could just be that they took a famous person that was famous for something else and made him a captain. If there is a big Russian connection. But
I don't know if that makes it a particular amount of sense, but yeah. It doesn't really give any detail about this. It's just a captain with a moustache. So I'm guessing this is going to be an armory thing.
Probably. Yeah, a bit more information on that would be interesting. Like, where does it come from?
Yeah.
I mean, for all we know, he might be very well known in Russia and just not in our circles.
The last thing is an upgraded collector's badge as well. So at the moment, I think it tops out at, what is it, like 350 ships or something? So it's going to be for up to 500 ships. Or if you
want a whale, even more.
Yes.
Could have put like a whale on top of it.
I mean, I have at the moment in port, and I've got a lot of the ships. I've got 410 at the moment, so I guess they were at the stage where they needed to think about adding a new higher tier one.
Yeah, I mean, the way they are releasing ships, they'll need to update it yearly.
So that's it really for the dev blog articles. I don't know if there's anything on the news portal that we need to cover. The only other topic that we had to talk about really is the release of the Bian, however one pronounces that, the Tier 6 French aircraft carrier, gone on sale as of, I think, was it yesterday, day before, something like that. So more carriers, everyone's favourite thing, of course.
And
other articles, so that's the main thing.
Small side note about that, that's only something I saw on Twitter, because obviously Painter put some googly eyes on it and posted it on Twitter.
Of course.
And then he made a follow-up tweet that apparently Wargaming told him he has to mention that it's sold in the armory for whatever. Even though he just tweeted the thing with googly eyes, they then sent him a message that when he creates content about the chip, he's he has to mention that it's all in the armory for what, 6,300.
Well, that's
just
how
something
I got
that I saw on Twitter. So it was. Is that the rework
somebody,
of the CC program?
Yeah, somebody in marketing being very zealous there, or somebody in the community team. If you mention it at all, you have to mention where you can buy it. Okay.
See if I can maybe find it.
Yeah, it's 6,300 doubloons for the basic, the ship itself, plus the slot, plus a 3-point captain. And it's got some 200% XP bonus combat missions tied to it, which I will see how long those last for. There's also the Admiral pack, which is nearly 12,000 doubloons. For a tier 6 ship, it's absolutely not worth 12,000 doubloons. I'll tell you that right now. Let's take a look, see. Find where it's.
I think I've checked it yet. So yeah, basically, you see it. I've been informed that I have to state that the ship will be available for 6,300 doubloons in a premium shop starting from December the 3rd with my content. And this was his content.
Googly eyes.
I mean,
that runs for a month, apparently. That 200% XP.
So that's wargaming these days.
Yeah. Can't even post googly eyes without, apparently. So I don't think you've played it or bought it, but I took the plunge. I bought it from the armory and had a 21-point captain left over that I've slapped into it. So the gimmick of this is it's only got bombers. You have two types of bombers. You have AP dive bombers, which have quite you drop 4 bombs per drop, and the spacing with the drop makes it quite hard to land more than 2 hits at a time. The actual what is it? It's like 3,600. Yeah, 3,600 citadel damage. So it's more often than not, you'll get a couple of overpens, which is a couple of hundred damage. If you manage to get a citadel hit, it's nice, but it's not doing that much damage overall. And so honestly, I think the other type is generally better, which is HE skip bombers, which obviously it's easier to hit more of them. You're releasing more of them per drop, and you actually can set fires with them as well. So they do seem to be the more useful squadron to use overall. The squadron sizes, it's 2x4, and don't think that they're not especially fast. They're not especially slow. They have got both of them a decently long boost time. And the only real negatives are that the AP bombers are not that useful, especially on cruisers where you have a skinnier target to hit. So I found myself using the AP bombers just in between uses of, if I didn't have enough HE bombers to send out, I would go for the AP bombers instead. The ship itself is really slow. They've kept its historical speed of 21.5 knots. It does have decent numbers of reserves, which is quite nice for tier 6 because you will run out of planes if you just keep throwing them into especially higher tier AA. What else to say about it? Not particularly stealthy, although it's not the worst of its tier. The AA defense is kind of weird. It's only got a 3-kilometer AA range, so it's actually more vulnerable, I think, to being struck by other carriers. Also because it's quite slow.
That's interesting,
it can't
actually.
run away very quickly. Probably the biggest overall gimmick is the number of fighters it can drop. Each of the squadrons can drop 8 fighters without superintendent or anything like that. Obviously, with you would get 9 fighters apiece, and the fighters actually have a fairly decent radius, and they last for 1 minute 40 seconds without any kind of captain skill buff. So that's the main gimmick overall, apart from the composition, is just how many fighters you get, because there are other carriers in the game that only have two kinds of attack squadrons. But I think this is the first time that Wargaming has given them any extra fighter charges. Normally, if you've only got two attack squadrons, you're actually worse off because you have fewer overall fighter charges to work with. But it's not just, one extra, it's way above and beyond. 8 fighter charges per squad is more than you'll get through in an individual game, just because they last for much longer as well. So
I mean,
I've only played a couple of games with it so far, but yeah.
At times when they want to address spotting, they basically create a carrier that's an absolute nightmare for destroyers to deal with, because destroyers, especially like at T6, they don't have anti-air, generally speaking. So you drop that above the cap, and for 1 minute 40 or something, like it's like this cap is unlivable.
Yeah, you have to either stay away from that, or if it's dropped on top of you, you have to run or smoke. You don't really have any choices unless you've got enough. You're confident enough in your AA to shoot it down if you're a higher tier destroyer versus this thing, for example.
I mean, a US lower tier that could probably take care of the fight, but if you're like a Fubuki or something, like, it's like you're just screwed. This cap is basically for like almost 2 minutes, depending the cap is, you would just have to go away or hope that somebody else takes care of them.
It definitely, compared to all of its contemporaries and compared to all of the other carriers in the game, you could far more afford to use. Like, a lot of carriers, preferentially, and like in terms of dropping fighters for allies, it's kind of hard to do in a timely fashion a lot of the time. So you will tend to see carriers use their fighters more for spotting than anything else. And we kind of talked about this during the section when we were talking about the carrier spotting mechanic changes potentially. So this just can drop way more fighters for spotting and still have some left for protecting allies. You don't have to really make any choice in that regard. The only other thing that's different about it is in port, you get the aircraft carrier, the aircraft elevator pops up and down when you're in port, when you're viewing it. So that little bit of animation is quite nice to see. So it's not like, if I was looking at all the Tier 6 carriers, I would still rather play the Ark Royal. Like, the planes are slower, but you've got the good torpedo bombers to work with at that tier, or the Low and Heart with its dive bombers. So Bjarne's a bit weird, and the fact that you've got the speed of a tier 4 carrier in terms of crawling along at 21 knots, it's quite easy to get caught out potentially. So it's definitely one for the history fans in terms of this was a carrier that actually existed and did play some role in World War II. But as I'm sure Drac will talk about, if we get him to talk about it next week, it was a pretty dreadful design in real life. French carrier aviation pre-war was basically restricted to this one carrier. And it wasn't really until post-war that they started seriously doing anything with carriers. And even then it was with some ex-Royal Navy carriers before they got back into designing and building their own carriers in, what was it, like the 70s, the 80s? It was a couple of decades after. So, it exists. It's not terrible, but it's kind of hard to recommend it to anyone that isn't some big history buff that just has to own the only French carrier that existed in World War II. It does, like, if we ever get an actual line of French aircraft carriers, which would seem odd, like if a French CV line would be lots and lots of paper ships, I would imagine. Maybe they would have some other fictional upgrade at tier 6 or some sister ship of the Bjarne that was never built, or I don't know what they would do. Or maybe the fact that we have the Bjarne as a premium means that we're less likely to get French CVs. But given Wargaming's quest for content, given the nature of something like World of Warships, I'm sure at some point they'll dig out some set of line of blueprints and go, here, French CVs. These totally existed.
we have Russian carriers, and then
true.
they could make Austrian
carriers. Would be
carriers.
worse than that. Some of them would even have existed. What was the one they had post-war that was like a Centaur class or something? It would basically be a British Stevie.
Yeah.
For their tier 8 probably. So yeah, they haven't had a lot of aircraft carriers. They did operate a Bogue class, I think, during World War II. No, an Avenger class, there we go. Just similar to the Bogue. Which I guess you could probably squeeze that in as a tier 4. And they had a pair of ex-Independence class ones that were given to them post-war. So maybe that would do for their tier 6 with Independence class. There was the Joffrey class, which I think was laid down and then scrapped. So again, I guess you could put that in as a tier 6 maybe. A Colossus class is what they have. So that would do for a tier 8.
So basically you've already confirmed that they're definitely doing French carriers with this.
I think so. I think there's probably, given that it's only every other tier, there probably is enough for them to scrape together some ships. I don't know what they would do for tier 10. The Clemenceaus are, I think, probably too modern, unless it was some kind of preliminary Clemenceau design. The Clemenceaus were in service from the early 60s. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that would be just in terms of the time. In terms of the time frame, they might be able to squeeze in a Clemenceau at tier 10. What happened to Friday? My internet went herpaderp on Friday, Foo. It went down repeatedly. So we gave up on the idea because it would have just been going up and down while we were trying to do the podcast. But I had an evening this evening, so we thought we'd do it today instead. And we even got extra things to talk about, so it kind of worked out.
Jedi basically just used a mind trick and his internet disappeared.
It was really annoying. I couldn't do anything. I was trying to, it just reduced to trying to watch stuff on YouTube, and it was just start, stop, and I just gave up in the end. It was really irritating. Seagulls blown away. That must have been what it was, yeah. Whatever the issue was, though, they did fix it. It was just Friday evening. So I think that's about it. I don't know if there's any other anything we want to talk about, but we've
covered the dev blocks. And we're going to come back to the historical parts of the Italian ships with Drag next week.
We're definitely going to have plenty to pick his brains about. We've got the entire Italian line. We have this Atlantico, which I'm sure he might be able to dig something up on. We'll see. Or it might be some super obscure thing he's never heard of. That's also possible. And he'll definitely have something to say about the Beyond. So, yeah. And maybe French aviation in general. Or naval aviation, rather. So that should be quite interesting, especially as the Italian line is a line that mostly existed.
Yeah, and the podcast with Drag is planned for Thursday this week, right? For the 9th of December.
Yes. He can't do Friday, so we're going to do Thursday instead.
And I think with that, we've basically come to an end here.
Pretty much. Sam's been notably absent. Where is he? He's in his box. Hang on. I'll grab Sam, and Sam can wave goodbye to everybody. There we go. A box of Sam.
And everything comes crashing down.
And also me knocking over my microphone. Well done. That was totally according to plan.
Obviously.
His Majesty was not amused that I disturbed him. Anyway, totally professional end to the podcast there.
Yes.
Potentially breaking my microphone. It's fine. Can't even blame Sam for knocking that over. That was all me.
You can still blame him. He's a cat. He will smugly take it. So, yeah. And with that, have a good night, everyone. And we'll be back on Thursday.